Colonel Janya Holt sat in the command center of Zeltha's main defense facility, watching the last of the battle unfold on the monitor screens. The planet, a colony on the edge of the known galaxy, had been under siege for the past week. The Xenor, an alien race known for their military precision and deadly technology, had pushed Zeltha's defenses to their limits. What was once a thriving world full of cities and farms now stood on the brink of destruction. Buildings crumbled as bombs fell, and the skies were streaked with the green and blue explosions of weapons that tore through the atmosphere. The Zelthan military had done everything in their power to hold back the Xenor invaders. Every fighter, every warship, and every soldier had fought tooth and nail to keep their world intact. But it wasn't enough. The Xenor fleet was just too strong. "We can't last much longer," Janya muttered under her breath as she looked at the battle maps flashing on the large holoscreen before her. "We need help now." She sent out a desperate call for reinforcements. They had trained for this moment. They had planned for it. The Alliance, the largest and most powerful collective of peaceful planets in the galaxy, had promised their support in times of crisis. The backup was supposed to come. It had to. Minutes felt like hours. The strain of watching her people fight and die weighed heavily on her shoulders. She stood tall, trying to maintain a strong front for her soldiers, but deep inside the panic was beginning to settle in. She kept her fingers crossed as the communications officer called out to her. "Colonel Holt, we're receiving a response. Reinforcements are on their way." Janya felt a slight relief at those words. The help was finally coming, and soon the tide of battle would turn. She looked up at the monitor, watching the sky above Zeltha. In the distance, she could see a group of ships entering the atmosphere. These weren't Alliance vessels. Those were sleek, well-organized ships designed for long-range precision strikes, clean and effective. But the ships that appeared over Zeltha weren't like that. They were massive, their shapes jagged and irregular, with dark metal hulls that seemed to absorb the light around them. The ships didn't glide in gracefully. They crashed through the atmosphere, leaving streaks of fire in their wake. "Is this a mistake?" Janya whispered to herself, confused. She had no idea what kind of ships these were, but they didn't look like the reinforcements she was expecting. The ships came closer, and the screen filled with the details of their hulls. They were too large to be anything the Zelthan fleet had ever encountered. Their structures twisted in ways that defied the laws of engineering. There were no recognizable markings or logos, no signs of anything remotely familiar. These ships looked raw, like they had been pieced together in a rush. Before Janya could speak, the communications officer's voice cracked over the intercom again. "Colonel, we've got a transmission from the ships." Janya's heart skipped a beat. She turned to the officer and nodded, signaling to open the channel. A deep, gravelly voice echoed through the command center. "We are the Ravenborn. Stand aside." Janya's mind raced. The name sounded unfamiliar, but it carried an undeniable weight. It wasn't the usual Alliance response. The voice wasn't speaking in the calm, orderly tone she had come to expect from the peaceful civilizations of the galaxy. This voice was something else entirely, rough, primal, commanding. Who are you?" Janya stammered, trying to regain some control of the situation. There was a long pause, then the voice spoke again, this time with an edge of finality. "We are the storm that answers your call." Janya's confusion deepened. What did that mean? Who were these people? And why had they come to Zeltha's aid? She had no time to waste. The Xenor were still pushing forward, their fleet pressing closer to the heart of the colony. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. "Show us your credentials," she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady despite the growing anxiety. "We were expecting Alliance reinforcements, not whatever this is." The voice on the other end remained unshaken. "Credentials?" The voice chuckled, though it wasn't a friendly sound. "We are not here for your bureaucratic games, Colonel. We are here to fight." Before Janya could respond, the screen before her exploded into a frenzy of flashing lights and alarms. The Xenor fleet, which had been holding back in the face of the incoming reinforcements, now surged forward with renewed strength, as though they had been waiting for something. The Xenor ships lined up in perfect formation, firing in unison at the distant Ravenborn ships. But what happened next made Janya's blood run cold. The Ravenborn ships didn't just take the hits, they absorbed them. The weapons fired from the Xenor ships did nothing to slow the Deathworlders' advance. Instead, the Ravenborn ships twisted and turned with unnerving agility, each movement calculated and precise, like creatures moving in perfect sync with their environment. Then, without warning, the Raven-born ships launched a counterattack. But it wasn't a simple strike, it was a full-on assault. Giant beams of energy shot from the ships, tearing through the Xenor fleet. In mere moments, the entire Xenor formation began to break apart. Ships exploded in midair, turning into clouds of fiery debris as if they were paper being torn apart by a storm. Jania watched, stunned, as the Raven-born fighters emerged from the wreckage. They didn't wait for the Xenor to regroup. They were already on the move, charging forward at lightning speed. Zeltan soldiers, who had been watching the battle in stunned silence, found themselves suddenly irrelevant in the face of the brutal violence unfolding before them. The Raven-born soldiers were unlike anything Jania had seen before. They were tall, built like living mountains with eyes that gleamed with a ferocity she couldn't even begin to comprehend. They wore armor that seemed to merge with their bodies, dark and gleaming with strange markings. Their weapons were unlike anything Zeltha had in its arsenal. Massive blades, glowing with unnatural energy, cleaved through enemy ranks as if cutting through paper. "Do they even know what they're doing?" Jania asked, her voice barely a whisper as she watched one of the Raven-born soldiers charge into the heart of the Xenor forces. The soldiers didn't pause. They didn't hesitate. They fought like predators in the wild, each one seeking the next target to tear apart. They didn't fight with strategy or tactics, at least not in the way Jania understood them. They fought with a raw primal energy that left no room for mercy. The Xenor, despite their technological superiority and military precision, faltered in the face of the Raven-born onslaught. It wasn't that their weapons were ineffective, it was that they couldn't seem to land a blow. The Raven-born moved like shadows, fast and unpredictable. Where there was once order and calculation, now there was only chaos. As the battle raged on, Jania's eyes widened with a mix of awe and disbelief. The tide had shifted completely. The Xenor were no longer the predators. The Raven-born had become the apex hunters, and the Xenor were nothing more than prey. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a line to the Raven-born," she ordered, her voice filled with urgency. The officer worked quickly, but when the connection was made, Jania's question was still the same. "Who are you?" she asked again, her voice steady despite the overwhelming situation. "Where did you come from? Why did you help us?" The voice from the other end answered simply, "We heard your call, and we came to answer. Now hold your ground, Colonel. Your world is safe for now." And just like that, the Raven-born soldiers began to pull back, their job done. They didn't linger, didn't wait for thanks. They simply turned and left as quickly as they had come. Jania was left in stunned silence. The battle was won, but the questions would linger for much longer. The Raven-born had come when they were called. But now she couldn't help but wonder, had they come to save them or had they simply come to destroy?